Don't underestimate the negative impact of isolating and avoiding interactions. Lawyers love to do it. We don't like to talk about our problems. Loneliness is painful isolation. Solitude is desired isolation. Clearly, one's more appealing than the other. So maybe they may seem similar, they're not identical. This is the conspiracy of silence. When we don't do something, that when we know someone is struggling and needs help, we won't talk about it.
Welcome and thank you for joining us for another Justia webinar. My name is Nina and I'll be the moderator today. All right, now to kick things off, I want to go ahead and introduce our speaker, Brian S. Quinn. Brian S. Quinn, Esquire, is a licensed attorney in Pennsylvania who currently serves as the Education and Outreach Coordinator for Lawyers Concerned for Lawyers of Pennsylvania, Incorporated, a lawyer's assistance program established in 1988 for the purpose of helping lawyers, judges, and law students recover from alcoholism, drug addiction, and mental health disorders. The webinar presentation that you're about to watch will be approximately 1 hour, and time permitting, Brian will be taking questions from the audience at the end of the presentation. So if you have a question that you'd like him to answer towards the end of our time here today, you can go ahead and submit that by clicking the Q&A button in the control panel at the bottom of your screen. Now, without further ado, here is Brian to discuss professionals at risk, detection, prevention, and the conspiracy of silence.
Thank you very much, Nina. I appreciate the introduction. Professionals at risk. Yes, indeed. We have a lot to talk about today because there's a lot of things going on in our profession that do put us at risk. So we're going to talk about some of those things, how we can detect them, hopefully how we can come up with some helpful hints on how to, let's say, prevent or avoid or minimize the impact of some of these things that are part of our profession. It's something that I refer to as the conspiracy of silence, and I'll talk to you about that specifically when we get to that point of the program. So, as I said, some of the problems that we face as lawyers have to do with the misuse of substances. I'm going to be talking about lawyers' assistance programs, by the way, toward the end of the program. I like to, Nina has told you that what I do. I'm an educator for a lawyers' assistance program. So I think I'll take 20 seconds and say there are 50 states, there are 50 programs. You'll see a link at the end of the program for the American Bar Association's directory of lawyer assistance programs. So I'm going to talk about them in a more generic form. We're not all the same, and I hope you will take advantage of that directory and you will find the program for your state, keeping in mind that there is a correlation between some of the work that we do and the rules of professional conduct. So obviously, all of you have to be aware of the rules of professional conduct in your particular state. So what are we looking at right now? On the screen right now is a portion of the study done by Patrick Krill, a lawyer and a certified drug and alcohol counselor who performed this scientific study on behalf of the American Bar Association. Krill was working with Hazel and Betty Ford at the time. He's no longer doing that. He's an independent consultant to our profession. And you can see that this was published in early 2016. So Krill did this study 10 years ago, 5 years before the pandemic, 10 years from now. So why do I mention that? Number one, these are still considered to be the benchmark statistics. But I can tell you that Krill has recently finished a 10-year update. So that the survey part is done. The questions and the responses are finished. 30 states participated in this year's program, 19 states on the one that you're looking at right now. About 23,000 lawyers participated in the one you're looking at now. 40,000 lawyers are expected to be approved for in terms of their backgrounds. You had to be licensed and you have to be employed in some capacity. So there's about 45,000 responses to the most current study, but they expect about 5,000 to kind of be dropped off because they're merely people who have a law license and are not engaged in any form of employment in the practice of law. Because we want to really see what being a lawyer is like in terms of how it impacts our mental health and our use of substances. So this is the portion of the current study, the one that's already been completed and published, as opposed to the quote unquote future study, the results will be published in early 2026. So you can see, number one, that Krill found that as compared to 6.4% of the United States population, 21% of all licensed lawyers are problem drinkers. That means they drink to the point of it being hazardous or possibly even a dependency upon alcohol. And look at that number for young lawyers. Now, he also included lawyers in their first 5 years of practice. A third, 1/3 of the lawyers under the age of 30 are problem drinkers. Not people who have one or two drinks too many, once or twice too often, but people who drink to the point of it being hazardous or, as I said, possibly an alcohol dependency. So, startling figures for many people. And Krill also, of course, studied mental health impact. And of course, that is no better, frankly. He found that as compared to 7% of our population, which suffers from clinical depression, not the ups and downs of everyday life that we all experience. We're talking about people who they presented their symptoms, their issues, their concerns to a clinical specialist, a medical professional, would have been diagnosed with a depression disorder. So the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, is used by medical professionals. Krill applied the same criteria as in the DSM to the people who responded to this particular study. He found that 28% of the respondents would qualify for a depression disorder diagnosis. 23%, not just I'm stressed out, or 19% said they were anxious. Many, many, many more people said those things about how they felt. But people who would have actually qualified for a diagnosis are on the screen right now. And once again, of course, higher rates among younger lawyers. Now, there have been other attempts to quantify these issues. The ALM Intelligence and Law.com did I'll call this one a survey, not a scientific study. This was merely sending questions out to people and asking them how they felt about the work that they do, in particular, mental health, because you're going to be hearing a lot more about the mental health aspects of the impact of being a legal professional than you are the substance impacts, because that goes hand in hand with the call volumes that lawyer assistance programs are realizing around the country. Speaking for us in Pennsylvania, 20% of the people who call us have a primary presenting issue that's alcohol. 73% in this current year, 2025, 73% of the callers have a primary presenting issue that deals with their mental health, be it stress, be it anxiety, depression, burnout. Combined, 73% of the callers. And I can't obviously speak for every state, but the trend is certainly going in that direction. Part of it is because lawyers are much more willing to discuss their mental health, but not all lawyers. And this is why I have this particular survey on the screen. So when we have this on here, what are we looking at? We're really looking at, as I said, how people feel. Now, how do they feel about what they do? You know, the legal profession has been in an increased risk to develop problems with alcohol, drugs, and mental health for many years. This was done in 2020, 2022, and in 2024, this particular survey. Not a study, it's a survey. Open to anyone working in a law firm setting around the world. 77% were from the United States. The overwhelming majority of legal professionals believe that their mental well-being is worse off as a result of their chosen career. 74% it said that they feel the profession has had a negative impact on their mental health. Sheds light on life inside of our profession, doesn't it? So keep in mind, these are people who are not diagnosed. These are people who say, I feel this, I feel that. When they were asked about stress in their life, and they were asked, what do you do about that stress when you experience it? 44% said, I drink. 64% of the people who participated in this particular survey said they felt they suffered from anxiety. 31% depression. But that number at the bottom of this particular screen is the one that troubles me the most. 18% said that they had contemplated suicide at some point in their careers. Not prospective, not in futura. People who had contemplated. 18% of all lawyers who participated. The National Institute of Health tells us that 4.3% of all adults in this country will have a suicidal ideation at least once in their lifetime. So compare that to this particular type of number. What do they do about it? Let me talk about the specifics of why they felt that way about their jobs. What negatively impacts your mental well-being? Well, there were many factors, apparently. The most popular by far for the feeling of always being on call and unable to disconnect, billable hour pressures, lack of sleep, client demands. Why don't you take some time off? 36% said they use all their vacation. So 64% don't. Why don't you? Same issues. Can't disconnect. Client demands. Don't want to face all the work waiting for me when I get back from vacation. So what do you do when you can't disconnect? When that window of opportunity to relax and just take it easy gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Well, we go 0 to 60 in this busy day, this busy week of ours. What's going to take me back from 60 to 0 is within a few drinks or maybe a pill. So, as I said, this was done slightly before the pandemic, 2 years after, and then 4 years after. The work from home environment, many people think, contributed to some of these particular numbers. But when you say the billable hour, that apparently a rather large number of people said that was a problem in their lives. Why? What are you doing about it? Is the next question. Well, are you asking for help? Can't. Why? 65% said I can't take time off to tend to my mental health issues. But the reason, folks, can be boiled down to one word: fear. Fear of what people will say about them, and fear about how it's going to impact their careers, obviously in a negative fashion. Hurt their career trajectories. Almost 80%. Same kind of a number. Fearful of what people at the firm would think about them if they ask for help. But over half simply said, I have too much work to do to take time off, to take care of the problem that the work causes. The work and the reason we don't take care of the problem caused by the work are one and the same. What we do as lawyers every day. Kind of a circuitous hamster on the wheel mentality, isn't it? We keep using that our work, I'm too busy. So these are the kinds of problems that we've got to look at and start to think about, well, what are the causes of these problems? How about depression? Stressful life events. There's so many possible causes. It could be genetic. It could be brain regulation. Stressful life events, medications, medical problems, all are involved. But stressful life events, now we're talking our language, aren't we, in the legal profession? What kind of stressful life events? Well, there's all different kinds. Some of the things that I want you to be able to have access to. I'm not going to do this now, is you can go through this assessment. But this is what it looks like, for example, when someone calls a lawyer assistance program confidentially or even anonymously. But I don't know of any mandatory identification qualification that unless you tell us who you are, we're not going to help you. I've never heard of it. Who would want to call? They felt they were going to be compelled to reveal their identity. Now, some people are different. Many people are uncomfortable. And there's a good reason for that. Lawyers like to be in control. They don't like to disclose anything that they think may be considered a weakness. So look at these at some point. This assessment, I'm not a clinician. Let's make sure you understand that. Lawyer, not clinician. But these are the kinds of things that people are usually asked when they take a depression assessment. Okay? Feeling overwhelmed, feeling fatigued, less energetic, worthless, hopeless, thinking about death or suicide. Okay? But stressful life events. Okay? These are the kinds of things that we've got to look at. We simply have to look at them. Many people say that among the symptoms of depression are social isolation and occupational isolation. Before I talk about stress, don't underestimate the negative impact of isolating and avoiding interactions. Lawyers love to do it. We don't like to talk about our problems. What will people think? What will people say? It'll look like I'm weak. Who wants a lawyer that's got all these issues? I'm supposed to be a problem solver. But beware of not alone, not solitude, not physical solitude. It comes under this heading called aloneness, which can be broken down into solitude and loneliness. And many people believe that loneliness, solitude, and isolation are the exact same thing, but there are key differences. Solitude is the objective state of being physically alone, which is usually accompanied by the subjective experience of enjoying one's own company. Loneliness is a feeling, an emotion, a perception, actually, of a general sense of lacking connection or belonging, while simultaneously desiring more connection with others than one actually has. You get to the point where you feel like what I do doesn't matter and nobody cares. And, we have to be aware of it. We truly do. Loneliness is painful isolation. Solitude is desired isolation. Clearly, one's more appealing than the other. So maybe they may seem similar. They're not identical. So being okay with being alone and not getting an attitude that I am alone enables a person to be that way with themselves physically while enjoying their own company. So when you lack this social connection, this combination of loneliness and solitude, that's a symptom of depression. It's in the clinical list of symptoms of depression. So widespread loneliness in the country has been declared a public health epidemic a few years ago by the U.S. Surgeon General at that time. He actually said that it poses a risk as deadly as smoking up to 15 cigarettes daily. I'll put it in context for you. A doctor, the Surgeon General of this country said that, not me. And half of U.S. adults said they've experienced loneliness. So if you start to feel any of those feelings, you got to ask for help. You got to do something about it. Because the number one presenting issue now seems to be stress in our profession, and it's composed of psychological stress is composed of these four elements, the sequence of elements, and this is it goes stimulus, thought, emotion, behavior. Our mental response to stress reflects how we first perceive and then subsequently think about any given situation in our lives. Our brains are constantly evaluating our present circumstances, and defining them as rewarding, risky, threatening, maybe even unknown. That initial response operates on a subconscious level and influences our emotional, our physical responses, which are certainly interrelated. That subconscious and spontaneous analysis of every single situation we encounter is actually a vital part of our instinctive survival mechanism. It's that we inherited from our ancient ancestors. It's similar to the animal kingdom's freeze, fight, or flight response, as the brain sends these signals out to the rest of our body, triggering specific chemical reactions as well as other specific physical and emotional responses. So, it can propel us to take immediate action in an emergency to get out of harm's way. It can, of course, trigger fear-based responses, we causing us to strike out in defense and later, hopefully as civilized humans, regret those actions. But what we really need to do is to learn how to exert some conscious control over the thoughts and emotions, that second and third element, to put the brakes on impulsive, harmful, or inappropriate emotions, and then that last element, behaviors. This awareness of how and why we respond the way we do to certain events, combined with a little training, allows us to exert some control over automatic physical and emotional responses. Not only can we, but we must consciously change our reactions if we're going to reach our full potential in life. We can learn to hit the pause button, to thoughtfully respond rather than to instinctively react. So what about you? Do you stay calm and unruffled, looking for solutions? Or do you get angry and look for somebody to blame? Some people are stress hardy, don't seem to be bothered by the pressures and problems, or maybe affected by them at least, the problems and pressures of everyday life. They seem to thrive when the challenge is put before them. Others are unable to withstand any pressure or difficulty without being upset or rendered unable to act. Most of us fall somewhere in between. So it's thoughtful, optimistic, and calm emotional responses, like my friend, the French bulldog on this yawn here, that reduce harmful stress. Resentment, anxiety, and anger generate harmful stress. Now, our individual responses are going to differ from one another because of our differences as individuals. So, we look at genetics, childhood experiences, environments, our present circumstances, like our health, our finances, our personal relationships, previous similar experiences. It's a matter of our awareness and our understanding of what's happening and what can be done. And alert, here are the key words: if anything, about a situation. And you know who doesn't like those words, if anything? Lawyers. What do you mean, what could be done, if anything, about the situation? That's my job. That's why people hire me, to know what needs to be done. And not only to know, but to solve that problem. People come to me to solve their problems. Remember, who wants to hear about my problem when I mentioned that earlier? We're problem solvers, right? Isn't that what we do? Isn't that why people come to see us and want us to be their lawyer? Okay. So let me ask you a question. What do you do about the problems of that person that looks right back at you in the mirror every day? What are you doing for them? What about their problems? Why do you say yes, 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 I'll help? Sure, I'll take that case. Sure, I can help you. Why do you say no to that person that looks right back at you every day? Why do we always put ourselves last? Sometimes we don't even understand or realize it, but we are transitioning from being problem solvers into nothing more than problem collectors. We just collect other people's problems all the time. And we never stop and worry and help the person who looks right back. Remember, the problem solver. Who helps the helper? Who helps the helper? Why does that file with our name on it get it put on the bottom of the pile? Have to work its way back up and down. New case, new problem, new client. Always something. Haven't you ever noticed that some days you deal well with a particular stressor? Some days you deal poorly with the same stressor. Maybe it depends on how you're feeling physically or emotionally at that time. There are many variables. Were you properly prepared? What was your immediately preceding physical and mental state? Were you hungry, angry, lonely, tired, ill, injured, taking medication, anxious, fearful, depressed, surprised, caught off guard? All those factors affect how you perceive and react to your present circumstances. So, what do you think? Why don't we just ask ourselves a few questions about the stress in our lives? How stressed are you? Number one on the list always seems to be, I've got too much to do and not enough time to do it. After that, it's a variety of things, depending on the situation, the practice, whatever type of work you do, whether you've got enough help. If you do, are they really, being managed properly? If you're somebody that works in a firm and you have supervisors to answer to, how are they? They cold, friendly, rude? If you're the solo practitioner, they have their own problems. They find competitions a little bit more difficult to deal with. They have to do it all. They have to do the networking and the rainmaking and practice law and take care of all the administrative things. You know what I mean? It's not easy. I'm a product of that. I've been a sole practitioner my whole career, outside of what I do now for Lawyers Concerned for Lawyers of Pennsylvania. So I'm not saying that all stress is bad, but when we start to hear these kinds of things, my work bores me. I'm not good at what I do. I'm not making a positive contribution to society or the lives of other people. What I do doesn't deserve respect. That's when the antenna have to go up. So if you start to hear people that you know in our profession expressing these types of things, naturally, if you feel them yourself, you need to ask for help. But if you hear someone else expressing these things, start to think about maybe asking some questions about how they're doing, what's going on. If there's something you can communicate with them about, share your feelings, see how they are. Okay? That's kind of a preview of that conspiracy that I mentioned earlier, the one that I call the conspiracy of silence. So I know one thing. Some stress can can energize us. It can motivate us to be productive and creative problem solvers. But too many events, too many changes, too many demands in our lives, even the positive things that are going on in our lives, when you combine them all together with the work we have to do, it can leave us feeling overwhelmed, sometimes paralyzed with worry about how we're going to get it all done. And at that point, when life seems too much to handle, stress is not your friend, it's your foe. Okay? When you start to feel overly responsible for everything and everybody, when we start to get depressed, defeated, hopeless when things don't go our way. All kidding aside, lawyers do have control problems. And when things don't seem like they are under our control, these are the feelings that we see being presented to the people that call the helplines. And then they start to rely on things to make them feel better, like alcohol or drugs, but they just want to quit. And unfortunately, that's when that suicidal ideation can creep into lawyers' lives. So, when you start to feel that too much, you're not in that friendly form of stress. You're in distress. And the warning I need to give you can be in distress and not even know it, because it doesn't happen like that. It's a gradual, incremental increase in our responsibilities, our duties, our pressures, pressures, the demands at home and work get combined. Well, didn't that happen to a lot of people during the pandemic? And some never recovered from it. Long work days got longer. Long work weeks got even longer than usual. And it causes us a lot of problems. Look, let's just stop for a moment and recall the last time you were acutely aware you're under a lot of stress. It was probably a crisis that left you feeling that you had lost control of a situation or its outcome. The truth, however, is that you were probably already under a lot of stress. And that crisis merely accentuated your awareness of it, because many, if not most, lawyers are in a state of denial as to the amount of stress that they're under. Because aside from the external demands placed on us as lawyers, are the internal demands lawyers place upon themselves. And one of the characteristics of lawyers who have that happen is perfectionism, which has long been a trait of lawyers. We push ourselves to work harder, and despite our accomplishments, many people feel they still don't measure up. They may feel even shame and guilt when not working, staying busy. Yeah, it's called. There is such a thing as workaholism. I'm reaching over right now. I didn't think I was going to do this. I forgot I had these right on my desk today, and I don't know whether you'll be able to see this. Confessions of an Alcoholic. Strike that. Confessions of a Workaholic. Wayne Oates. This was written in 1970. This is the man who invented the word workaholic. And what about a much more modern discussion of it? Workaholics, the respectable addicts. There are books about all these things. Many of the lawyer assistance programs in this country, ours included in Pennsylvania, give these things away. Except that you've got to go on the website and just ask for it, and they'll send it to you for free. So do it. Take advantage of it. It's great. So back to the workaholic lawyer who tries, even when they try to relax, what does that do to them? Creates feelings of distress. Therapists tell us that workaholics stuff their feelings. That is, as they experience life's eventual troubles and periods of pain or difficult times, they stay busy with work and don't allow themselves the experience of feeling pain or sorrow, nor do they certainly ever take time out to discuss those innermost feelings with anybody else. Then in times of relaxation, maybe, if that ever happens in their lives, no busy schedule in front of them, those feelings come back that are giving them problems, causing them discomfort. They don't know how to deal with them. They've never developed any coping mechanisms or skills, because their solution's always been get busy, stay busy, get busy, stay busy, work, work, work. You can operate that way for years, not understanding what's behind this unhappiness of yours. Changing jobs, changing careers, family life goes, divorce, remarry, move to new homes, new cities, all in this vain attempt to find happiness. We need some stress busters, quick stress busters. Pause, lean back, give your eyes a rest. You're saying, I'm too busy. Well, I'm going to challenge you today. I'm going to challenge you. I want you to remember some of these little increments of time that I'm talking about. Smartphones, all these distractions on here, all these notifications that distract us. Make them happy, good, healthy distractions. I have one that comes up every 2 hours. It says, take 5, as in 5 minutes, to remind me to sit back, close my eyes, just take a few deep breaths, and maybe get up, walk around, walk wherever you work, in whatever workplace you just walk around there. If you can go outside, great. Focus on the present. Okay? It's something small. a few minutes, 5 minutes every couple hours. I started off at 3 hours. I'm not going to kid you. Wasn't easy. Another one, a meditation app I put on my phone. Now, I'm not talking about meditating. Some people like to do it in the middle of the day. I get it. I prefer the morning or the evening for 10 minutes. 10 minutes? Yeah, 10 whole minutes. Well, if you're like me, or like I was, I can't keep my mind still for a minute, said Brian. Have you tried it? Let me think. No, not really. Why don't you try it? They call it a meditation practice. We have to practice it. I come from a community outside of Philadelphia. Philadelphia has a basketball team that used to have a gentleman named Allen Iverson who played for them. And I remember a very famous quote of his, we're talking about practice. Well, in this case, practice does make perfect, because 1 minute could become 3 minutes, becomes 5 minutes, becomes 8 minutes, becomes 10 minutes. And now 10 minutes just goes like that. 10 minutes in the morning. That's good enough, but 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes in the evening. There's 20 minutes, 5 minutes every couple hours. Where's this guy heading? I'm going to tell you. Well, exercise, eat healthy, good stuff. Sleep 8 hours a day if you can. I'll bet if I could see you in person and say, how many people sleep less than 6 hours? There'd be people who raise their hands, 7, 8, a lot of people. I present with doctors all the time. They tell me sleep sets the table for success. Okay? But cultural changes have to take place. And if you're in a position where you can do something about the hours and maintain a realistic work-life balance, create a culture that values discussion and relationships, encourage friendships, communication, mentoring, reducing isolation, our go-to, hole up in the office, shut the door even when we're in an office environment, let alone the work from home environment that makes it much easier for us to isolate and avoid interactions with other people. So these are the things that are a little bit more difficult. Yeah. That famous philosopher of life from the Karate Kid was right when he said, balance is the key. Balance is everything. Balance is the key, my friends. Work, life. And if you do not take care of the stress in your life, you will end up like Max here. The poster child, my poster child for burnout. You've all heard of it. We live in a culture of disconnection, distraction, and overload that's a perfect breeding ground for burnout. The law, with its unforgiving culture, its long hours, its billable time system of compensation and productivity, possesses and presents an especially acute risk for burnout. We need to raise our awareness level about the undeniable fact that this thing we call burnout is not likely to go away anytime soon, unless we start making some changes, even what many will call drastic changes. But what exactly is it? What's it mean? The term burnout is used casually and frequently, but a formal definition is surprisingly elusive. It's not an official medical diagnosis. It's not in the DSM, along with stress, anxiety, and depression. Not in there. Some define burnout as a disease of disengagement. It's a chronic process of unplugging and disconnecting from work, from friends, from family, and from our own health. The most important part of that definition is the word chronic, because burnout arises slowly. Now, these are the elements. They're not symptoms. That would make it give it a medical model. These are the elements of burnout that many people recognize. And the Mayo Clinic did come up with kind of a definition that fits into this, these three elements. And I'll give it to you as we look at this slide. Occupationally, burnout describes a special type of, this is important, work-related stress work-related stress, a state of physical or emotional exhaustion, fatigue, that also involves a sense of reduced accomplishment, cynicism, and a loss of personal identity, inefficacy. The burned out lawyer feels nothing they do really matters. They're generally disengaged. The burned out lawyer feels that they're exerting significant effort, but not making any progress or gaining any recognition. It's just another day on the old mill, the old treadmill, the millstone around them. Not making any progress at all. I'm working. I don't feel the same way that I used to when I get up in the morning and it's time to go to work. And I just don't have that feeling anymore. I'm worn out before I even leave. And I did get a good night's sleep last night. You can't beat this with extra sleep because it's really fatigue. And we are lawyers, that is, at extremely high risk for burnout because the job description of being a lawyer demands more from us than we can reasonably provide. And that gap creates this unique attorney burnout and maybe even lawyer anxiety, so some of us know so well. So it happens when we are dealing with high levels of stress and we don't have access to adequate resources like social support, helpful advice, feedback from friends, feedback from colleagues, or this feeling that we have any control over how we spend our time. So these are the kinds of things that it can do to us. Aside from, it can cause us constant anxiety. It really does. Feeling overwhelmed, sleep disturbances, fatigue, disengagement, depression, pessimism, you name it. Once again, it's very often misdiagnosed by medical professionals. Remember, it's not a medical diagnosis. Many people get treated for depression, okay, when really it's burnout, and they get medicated with depression medications. So we've got to be careful of how and who we go to. Warning signs. This is kind of a summary of what I've already mentioned. We're exhausted, feel detached, can't focus. So feeling stuck. The other thing that we don't give enough attention to sometimes in our profession is the impact of trauma. And I mention that because many people are dependent. Obviously, not everybody deals with firsthand trauma in their own lives. That can certainly impact all of us. These events or series of events that we experience physically, emotionally, life-threatening, they can really do have long-lasting impacts on us. It may be something that you experience because of the work that you do. It could be something that we call a vicarious trauma, vicarious anxiety sometimes even. It doesn't have to involve actual physical harm to oneself. So witnessing trauma, learning about someone's trauma, this repeated exposure is where I want to head with us, with lawyers. And I don't have any trauma related clients in my practice. What do you do? I just handle wills and estates, one lawyer said to me. And I said, wow, my experience has been if you put money, death, and family into a room, there's going to be trauma of some sort, even if it's emotional trauma. Sometimes it's worse. But, personal injury, family lawyers, criminal lawyers, defense lawyers, even prosecutors are dealing with the victims of crime and all these gruesome photos and cases where they represent the state or the Commonwealth. We got to remember that. It's called secondary traumatic stress. And it's this continued exposure to accounts of extremely or traumatically stressful events from those who experience them firsthand. And you hear these stories often enough that, it starts to impact us, and it's got to be addressed emotionally, physically, cognitively, spiritually to prevent long-term harm. There's also a risk called countertransference, where a person's own unresolved trauma gets triggered. That is how I got in this seat today. working for a lawyer's assistance program. Not exactly, but it was, my problem was that I needed help for a long time, and I didn't know where to turn for it. And it all had to do with something called countertransference, where I had unresolved trauma in my life. And it couldn't have started any earlier in my career. All I ever wanted to do was be a lawyer in my early childhood. And I lived in a family where nobody went past high school. My brothers, 3 brothers, mom, dad, the only one who went to college, let alone law school. Lived at home, went to college, was a commuter, worked, went to law school. Even in my first year, I was still living at home. And I moved out, and in a few years, I was married. But the point I'm trying to make is that, it was not a traumatic childhood. I took the bar exam. I was working, by the way, I was lucky enough to get a job working for a sole practitioner in my community, who was an elected state official, had a great reputation, great practice. He was kind of grooming me to take care of some litigation matters for him, because being an elected official, he was often in session in our state capitol, in the legislature. And I took the Pennsylvania bar exam, and I remember vividly the day that I passed the bar exam. We got the notice. My mentor and I looked at it. We were happy. We celebrated a little bit. And he said, "Look, I want you to come to court with me tomorrow, because I have a big case. I want you to be there. You can sit with our client at counsel table. You can, we'll introduce you to all the lawyers and judges that'll be there." And so there I was the next day. And I was sitting with his client the day after I passed the bar exam. Remember that. I'm in the courtroom. My mentor gets up to present his case, and 5 minutes into his presentation, he falls to the floor of the courtroom, dead of a heart attack. He was 43 years old. And I watched him die. I watched him, everything about. I remember it all. It happened 52 years ago in 1973. 52 years ago. Every detail is right up in here. I watched him die. I watched him put his body in a body bag and take it from the courtroom. And I had his briefcase and his car keys in my hand. And my world was just being turned upside down. And I said, what am I going to do? He had a wife and 3 young children. His wife said to me, "Brian, George was grooming you to be his new associate. You've got to take over his law practice now." All I had was a piece of paper that said I had passed the bar exam the day before. I wasn't even admitted to the bar. The day after his funeral, I did get admitted by emergency. Not a pomp and ceremonial courtroom setting, a clerk's office, ID. Check to make sure you passed the bar exam. Give me a little card, says you're a lawyer. Here's your ID number. Off I go, back to the office, sit in his desk, in his office, in his chair, and suddenly said to myself, these people that are coming in, they're here to see me. And I also said, I hope they don't think I know what I'm doing. I couldn't say that. Trust me. Every time someone said, Mr. Quinn, I need you to take my case in court, or I have a court case, it just triggered these feelings. I didn't know what anxiety was. I didn't know what PTSD was. I didn't know what any of these disorders were. Stress disorder, anxiety disorder, panic attacks. But I had them all, and I didn't know what to do. And I was afraid to say anything or do anything. But then I was just afraid. What will people think? What will people say? And I kept them inside. And I was triggered constantly. I got to the point where I couldn't even, as I walked toward a courthouse, I would start to feel it. I would start to pout. My heart would start to beat. I would start to perspire. I'd get into a courtroom and it was overwhelming. I didn't want my case to be called. I was afraid to walk up to her and address a court. And sometimes I was in the very courtroom where he died and stood in the very place he stood when he died. Sure, I was a young man, but not mentally, I couldn't deal with it. So I drank to hide all these things and make them go away. And I did it as part of the social scene of being a lawyer for a while. But then I was with you on Monday, you Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Sunday, Saturday. I spread it out so nobody could put this all together and say, this guy does this every day. And when alcohol wasn't enough, I relied on drugs. And my life started to go downhill gradually, then abruptly. And I couldn't pay my bills. I couldn't go to work. I would be paralyzed with fear, and I wouldn't even leave the office. I wouldn't leave home. I was afraid to go outside. So I stayed at home and I drank. And I lost everything. I don't have enough time to tell you everything that happened to me. But suffice it to say, I lost my home. I lost my office. I lost my freedom. I went to jail. And I was an alcoholic, a drug addict. And yes, I took client funds to try to make things end meet. I was a thief. I was an impaired lawyer in my 30s and 40s and 50s. And I tried to hide it from everybody. And I was afraid to say, I need help. So that's the power of countertransference and secondary traumatic stress. And it happens to us as lawyers. We start to over-identify with clients. We start to avoid certain things. It can turn into something called compassion fatigue, where we withdraw, we feel overwhelmed. Now, this is not the countertransference. This is just the vicarious trauma that can turn into something called compassion fatigue when we work with clients who go through this. Excuse me. We just want to give up. We just want to give up. We actually are happy when certain clients don't show up. I know some of you may be smiling. They canceled? Good. I didn't want to hear that story anymore. But what you have to realize, it's normal to be affected by our work. No one makes it out unscathed. We've got to come up with something to do. We've got to set realistic goals for ourselves. We've got to learn to start prioritizing. You list makers out there, this is a good one for you. Don't prioritize what's on your schedule. Schedule your priorities. What's on that list that's so important that you get everything done? You know, I had a bad day. Why? I only got 8 things done today on my list. Well, how many things were on my list? On your list? 10. Only 2 things you didn't finish? And you call that a bad day? Because I didn't get them all done. Perfectionism, remember? Problem solver, remember? How many things are critical, have to be done that day? What are you working to achieve? Create a plan that'll work towards your objectives. There they are again. I put them on there twice on purpose because I can't overemphasize the stress busters and setting boundaries between work and life. Learn how to disconnect. Challenge. Don't charge your phone next to your bed. It's your alarm clock? I hear you. Put it on the other side of the room then. There's a challenge. Make it a real alarm clock. Make it an annoying sound or a song or something that you hate. that'll make you get up and turn it off. That's what alarm clocks are for. Get up and get going. Oh, you just want to be able to reach over and tap and swipe and check stuff. Disconnect. Don't have it with you when you eat, when you exercise, when you socialize. Set limits. That email that you think is like being on the other side of the net from pick your favorite tennis pro. Receive, volley, serve. Receive, reply. Gotta answer these emails. It's 911. Social media. I know that they read my text. Why haven't they responded? The anxiety that goes with it. Or stress busters, remember? Can never have too much of them. Because we're in a position with high expectations and accountability. I finally asked for help from this adversarial life that I was living, where winning, one lawyer's win is another lawyer's loss. And the quest to win becomes paramount in our efforts to give our clients the ethical, zealous representation that we're duty-bound by the rules of professional conduct to provide. We've got to have these things. But if you don't address them like I did, they will ruin your life. I was ashamed and embarrassed. What will people think when they find out Brian Quinn got help? So I engaged in denial. I rationalized. I minimized everything I was doing. I had it all under control. That great word. This is the conspiracy of silence. When we don't do something, that when we know someone is struggling and needs help, we indulge in this conspiracy to lighten the normal stresses of our profession. Shh, we won't talk about it. Nobody has to know. That removes motivation to change. It prevents people from getting help. It does greater harm to people. So if you think you're an enabler, if you rationalize, if you ignore things, you hide your thoughts, you lie and make excuses for people, you rescue them, you back down from these ultimatums, give them a million last chances. It sounds like tough stuff, tough love maybe. I know that my life was saved by this, that ripple effect. A friend of mine finally found me and said, Brian, you need help. Let me help you. Let me call a lawyer's assistance program. What's that? I said. But that question, will you let us help you? That the person at the other end of a telephone at a lawyer's assistance program said, will you let us help you? And I finally said yes. I work for this one right here, Lawyers Concerned for Lawyers of Pennsylvania, that operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But there are others as well. Here's the one for the California State Bar. Here's that directory of lawyer assistance programs that I mentioned by state. All these 800 toll-free numbers, all these numbers that you can call. People are worried about, am I going to get turned in? You have to become aware of all these problems. Lawyers assistance programs exist to help other people. Okay. You have access in your materials to the remainder of these slides. I think for technical reasons, I don't seem to be able to show them all to you right here, and I don't know why, but suffice it to say, it's in this PowerPoint. It's in this PDF that you're going to get. Take advantage of it. Look at these things. My life was saved by saying one thing, yes. And after the question, will you let us help you? You're not alone. People have to understand that it's part of our profession, these issues. But don't give up hope. I want all these minutes that I asked you to do and to put here and put there. Take 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 2 minutes there. I'm just asking you to spend 4% of your life taking care of yourself, the person that looks right back at you every day, the problem solver. That's an hour a day, is 4% of your life. That's not too much to ask. So no matter what state you're located in, there's a lawyer's assistance program. The rules of professional conduct apply. Many states have an exception to the duty to report misconduct. Any state that has passed and adopted the model rules, the ABA model rules, has Rule 8.3C, which is an exception to the duty to report. So be aware of your states. For example, the California lawyers, look at all the material that you're going to get provided. It has all that you need to know about the rules in your state and the confidentiality. And for the other lawyers that are watching this from other states, if your state has adopted the model rules, you can rest assured that any information gained by a lawyer while participating in that approved lawyer's assistance program is protected and is subject to the exception to the duty to report. So please take advantage of all this information. Thanks for being here again today, and we'll see you again. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Brian, as always, for sharing your story and these incredible resources. As he mentioned, if you do want to go ahead and view the slides in full that has the links and all of those things that can help you get connected, those are going to be available for download. All you need to do is visit the webinar page, log into your Justia Connect account, and then you will be able to go ahead and download those materials. So they are there for you whenever you're ready. It looks like we have a couple of questions, Brian, if you're okay with taking a few. Okay, wonderful. So our first question is stress still a medically recognized condition? I've heard different things and I haven't confirmed if it's been removed from the language of workers' complaints. Do you have any insight on that?
Well, not being a clinician, I can only say that stress disorder is certainly still in the DSM. It is a recognized mental health disorder, and therefore it is, if you want to call it a medical condition, it's a mental health condition. It's professionally and medically recognized.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian. Our next question is, what are the earliest warning signs of impairment that colleagues or supervisors can look out for before the situation becomes critical?
Okay. A change from the baseline. Someone who is always available, who always is willing to have conversations, discuss things, suddenly is isolating and avoiding interactions is really the number one warning sign. The people who suddenly are difficult to communicate with, they don't answer phone calls. If you're in an office setting, they may be in the office, but they're by themselves. They shut the door, they're not accessible, and they always it's a change from baseline. Physical changes, professional changes, like, well, for example, if you see someone abrupt weight gain and weight loss, frequent accidents, bumps, bruises, odors, obviously, of alcohol, but mental health changes, become moody, become argumentative, aren't paying attention. The quality and the quantity of the work that they do seems to be declining. Frequent somatic complaints. They don't seem to be able to get enough rest because sleep disorders seem to go hand in hand with all types of mental health and substance misuse conditions.
Thank you, Brian, for that insight. Our last question for today is, how can firms and legal organizations create a culture that encourages that early intervention rather than silence or shame?
I could go on a long time about this one, but as I said, mentoring programs are strongly encouraged. I would strongly suggest that the leaders of a firm contact their state's lawyer's assistance program. I go and do educational programs in law firms. So invite them in, do them virtually, do them in person, have people come in that have clinical experience who are also involved in our programs. We're in every state. Every state has a program. So I would take advantage of that. It's free, and it's a great resource, and it goes beyond confidentiality. I mean, there are things you can discuss with somebody in a lawyer assistance program that you can't discuss with somebody in the firm who's in HR, for example.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Brian. It's always such a pleasure to have you back. We want to thank you all so much for joining us today for another Justia webinar. And thank you to Brian for being here again. Before you go, don't forget that Justia Connect Pro does give you that access to CLE credit opportunities through live and on-demand webinars just like this one, so you can stay informed and compliant. And Pro members also get enhanced directory profiles, AI-powered Justia chat to help you capture more leads through your profile, and exclusive discounts on Justia marketing solutions. To learn more, you can go to pro.justia.com. Thank you all so much for joining, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did enjoy it, please click the like button and subscribe to our channel for more videos on law practice and legal marketing. See you in our next video.